Well, folks, if you see our faces, it's a special edition of the DC Sports Huddle. I am Rob Woodfork alongside George Wallace and Dave Preston. You're doing product placement.
Yeah.
I didn't get that memo.
Well, sorry, we're going to a bowl game, so I kind of want to show everybody.
Impressive.
Yeah. At least you're going and not Talia Tagovailoa.
No, he's not going. I'm not going either, but they're going, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's nice to be here again.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. This desk is nice, and our friend Jason Webb behind the mic, I'm behind the mic. He's behind the cameras right now.
He's controlling. He has
controlling the show. This show, of course, is the DC Sports Huddle special, in which we talk about the great moments in DC sports, the not so great moments in DC sports, and there were plenty. And let's get right into it, guys. What was the story of the year in 2023? As if anybody doesn't have a guess what that might be.
I know. Yeah. July 19th.
Yeah.
The day that the Josh Harris group took over.
Yeah.
The Washington franchise football that plays in Ashburn and at FedEx Field. Yeah. That's the story of the year.
Yeah.
Hands down, no other story of the year. We can end this thing right now. That is the story of the year. Look, it was 20 years in the making. We know since last November when Dan Snyder explored the possibility of selling the franchise, and then nobody actually thought it would actually get to the point where it would happen. But that day in July at FedEx was pretty special when Harris and Magic Johnson, Mark Gein, Mitch Rales, the whole group was introduced to the
and
DNB.
Of course, he bought a round of beers for everybody
at the bullpen.
At the bullpen.
And even though, yes, the Capitals, the Nationals, the Mystics, DC United, they've all won championships more recently during this century. Maryland women, Georgetown's been to a Final Four. Maryland men have won a national championship. This is still a burgundy and gold town. No matter what the team is called, this is still a Washington NFL town. And after being held hostage for 25 years or so, boom, it's back, and the people have won. The people who outlasted the Danny have reason to celebrate. So it's going to be an exciting thing to see what happens from here on out, because they have a lot of decisions on the horizon, on and off the field.
And it's, a lot's been made of how the season has gone, and we get that. We talked about on this very program and multiple times throughout the year, there was a very good possibility that this season would go the way it has, right? Yeah. And you don't spend $6 billion on something and not have a plan. So to the fans that are just up in arms about him not firing Ron Rivera before the end of the year and making all these other changes, you just have to be patient, because it's coming January 8th. It's all going to change. And the one thing I will say, Dan Snyder's not coming back. So whatever happens, you still have that, right? We still have that. Yeah. He's not coming back. So,
unless he pulls off this mask and all of a sudden.
I mean, that would be just...
That's what would happen if they hire Bill Belichick as the next coach.
This isn't like Mission Impossible where everybody, Tom Cruise wearing different masks.
I was thinking Scooby-Doo.
That's fine too. That's an even better one. But no, I think that fans will see the plan start to come to fruition after the sweeping changes at the end of the regular season. So, but I will say that just be patient. This offseason is going to be so much fun. There's $90 million in cap space. You can have a top 5 draft pick, maybe number 2. If they lose out, they have a 33% chance to get the number 2 pick. I didn't do the math, someone else did.
Okay.
And then you're going to have a GM, coach, front office structure for the first time. Maybe a GM will actually hire a coach.
Ooh.
So that, I know, blow you away,
crazy
right?
here.
So that is a fun thing to look forward to this offseason. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah.
Also, I think we've talked a lot about the on-the-field product, the front office. I think the game day experience, too. There's a real opportunity, and we have heard of some things as far as concessions, the whole cleaning of the of some of the areas that hadn't been cleaned for 15 years at FedEx Field. We need to see an improved quality of field there. I think that's going to be on the agenda as well, because I don't think anybody's saying that this team's going to win the Super Bowl next year, but what they can do is deliver a playoff type game day experience for the fans who drive from Woodbridge, for the fans who might take the Metro in, for the people who have been supporting this team. Give them a reason to come and have a good day, as opposed to, you're only going to go if the team's any good.
Right. So can we safely say then that this was also the moment of the year? in DC sports?
My moment of the year is a different moment.
So the answer is no. Go ahead.
No.
I knew it.
It's going to be good, though.
I knew who to pose the question
My
to.
moment of the year was, what? We can be eliminated? That's when I in fact eliminated head coach Ron Rivera from seriousness. And
Was that 2023?
that was the first weekend of 2023.
Look at you.
Yes.
He's going to
try.
be
knows the numbers.
factual, yeah.
But
that was something, wasn't it?
That was
good like that.
definitely something.
Well, I'm pretty sure he knows he's eliminated now.
Yeah.
That was January 1st, I believe, because that was that Sunday where they lost. And
That was after the Cleveland.
right. And I think everyone said, wow, if Detroit wins, boom. And the fact that, yes, he has a lot of things on his plate as far as running the team from a GM perspective, dealing with the Martys, dealing with this, dealing with that, dealing with an owner at the time that nobody liked. And that's just the work issues that he had to deal with.
Yeah.
But you got to know. You have to know going into Sunday. You don't need to be super focused on it. It's not going to keep you up at night. Instead of thinking about what play you're going to run on 3rd and 7, you're thinking, oh, wow, we can be eliminated if X, Y, Z happens.
Agreed.
But you have to have an idea, or you have to have someone on staff who says, you know what, if A, B, and C happens, we're out of playoff contention. The fact that that did not exist is evidence that they're doing the right thing by moving on.
Yeah, there's
this
no.
offseason.
You're right. There's no. I know he says he's focused on week to week, but there's no excuse for that.
Right.
I mean, you have to know.
That's a mental lapse.
You have to know if you lose it, you could be eliminated in week 16 by however. You have to know that.
But I would
as
say
head
that's
coach.
kind of what plagued his tenure here
Right.
was that the attention to detail didn't seem to be there consistently. And so,
later in his tenure.
Yeah, right. It's like when they won the division the one year, fine. Everybody else was down, and that was good for a team that was in the midst of this big organizational overhaul and in the middle of a pandemic. But I mean, you talk about from that stuff to not knowing that his 5th round rookie quarterback was actually kind of good.
Yeah.
I mean, just letting all these details just by the wayside, and at some point, there has to come a bill due for that.
If someone wins a division and there's nobody in the stands to watch it, the playoff game, did it happen?
And they use a name that they don't use anymore. Does it happen?
Right.
Exactly.
And to your point, being focused on the day-to-day, game-to-game thing and not knowing the big picture, it's akin to not eating meals because you're so focused on breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's just that just, when I heard that, it was like, really? That's what we can be eliminated? Yes, you can be eliminated.
Yes.
Took them a little longer to eliminate him than
Yes.
we would
All right, so
coming
moving
up.
to the comeback athlete of the year in Washington, D.C. Mine's a little bit cruel in nature. And not cruel toward him, but just it's a cruel sort of twist in fate. And mine is Nicholas Backstrom, because he came back from that hip surgery, and he only missed one game.
Right.
When he came back. Starts the new season, plays the first 8 games, and then they shut him down, and he steps away from hockey. But it was a good comeback in that it's the sort of injury that you don't come back from typically, and the ice hockey players especially have issues returning to the ice when they've had this hip surgery. So. Not only did he return to the ice, I mean, he didn't play badly, but I mean, he wasn't the same guy that we saw during the Stanley Cup run, but he did return to the ice, and unfortunately, he was shut down later. But I had him as the comeback athlete
There are many
of the year
options.
in DC. There's not a lot
I was
of
struggling
options.
with this.
Yeah, because last year we had Brian Robinson Jr.
That was
an
easy,
obvious one. But so I had to kind of. It feels like a stretch a little bit for a guy who's shut down now, but.
Right.
My net was extended a little bit. I did the whole D.C. metro area, which includes local colleges, and Mike Hollins, the University of Virginia running back who was shot November of 2022, was able to make it back on the field this year. Actually, I think he received some votes for the National AP College Football Player of the Year. So
I like that
There you
one.
go.
That's pretty good.
That's very good.
But it's, again, we didn't have I guess we're fortunate in the D.C. metro
Yeah.
area that we didn't have a lot of guys get injured, that they had to come back from these injuries.
Right.
I was hoping that it would be that we'd be saying that about Steven Strasburg last year, but it was not to be, unfortunately.
Yeah. How about the
And
breakthrough?
I don't think it's going to be at all. I got a newcomer. What are we doing next?
Oh, breakthrough athlete of the year.
I got
You can make him a newcomer. That's fine.
I got two. Lane Thomas had an outstanding season for the Nats. He is still, I think he's close to his ceiling, but this year he had career highs in games played, at bats, hits, runs, every imaginable category, playing every day in right field. And he's a guy who, if things work out, will be the senior statesman on the next really good Nationals teams that are competing for division titles and playoff berths. Because I think when we see the haul that we got for trading off the Stars the last couple of years, there's some gems that are coming up that are already playing now that I think in a few years, maybe even this year, they might be, I guess, pesky and compete. But in 2 years, there's no reason not to expect this Nationals team to compete for a playoff berth. And I think Lane Thomas is the Ryan Zimmerman-esque older guy who has been there, who has done a lot of the things that can show a lot of these younger guys how to be a major leaguer.
You want to get, we still doing this one?
Yeah. Would you want to move on?
No. But I'm trying to think because I was going baseball, but I think you could also, Francis Tiafoe deserves a lot of credit.
Yes.
Was
Absolutely.
that yours?
Yes.
Was that yours?
No, it's not mine, but.
Into the top 10.
Yeah.
And continues to and make his way up in Grand Slams, and hopefully he's going to get there. But as far as a local product, and I think his year deserves that kind of credit.
I was going to go a little outside, and we don't cover Baltimore as local, and I'm just going to say that right now. That is not a local team as far as I'm concerned. But I'm going with Justin Madubuike of the Ravens because he just set an NFL record. He's had at least a half sack in 11 straight games.
Is that right?
Why can't they get a good pass rusher in Washington?
Right, and that's the thing. And they didn't spend the second overall pick on him. He's a third-round pick. And he's part of a defense that actually a no-name defense in Baltimore, which is kind of hard to believe because Baltimore, they've had Ray Lewis and they have, they've got Roquan Smith now, but it's a no-name defense. They lead the league in sacks. They're top 2-3 in most defensive categories. So, he's making a big name for himself on a no-name defense. So Justin Madubuike would be my
That's
breakout.
a good pull.
My honorable mention would have been Dylan Strome. He's had a heck of a start this season. He was in his second year, I believe, with the Caps. Played really well last year, and the question was, could he sustain that, or was that just a flash in the pan? Well, the first half of the season they're not yet done with, and he's well on his way to passing his totals from last year.
You know what else you could do as a moment, too, to kind of play off the whole Commander Sale thing?
Yeah.
The trading of Chase Young and Montez Sweat.
Oh, yeah, that was a watershed moment.
To see how far, we did the trade deadline thing for Juan Soto last year, right?
Right.
But to see how far the fact that you're thinking about trading the number 2 overall pick, and then a guy that you traded back into the first round to get.
Yeah.
And a defense in year 4.
And you got 0 first-round picks for either of them.
Right. That's just an honorable mention.
So they'll save on the contract.
That's all.
All right, so DC sports person or people of the year. I mean, this is going to be a very Commander-centric show. Let's just admit that right now, okay? Because it's just
nobody else, anybody else in town is.
I mean, the Wizards are the Wizards. And
we're not even going to mention them in this podcast, so you just did.
Yeah, I know, but that's why I did, was because that's the only way we're going to mention them.
They're a major league team.
I mean, Josh Harris has to be the sports person of the year in DC because anytime you plunk down 6.05, and that 0.05 is important.
Yeah.
$6.05 billion to get a team.
That's with a B.
Yeah, with a B.
Especially when you think that 0.05, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's, $50 million. That 0.05 is quite a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, just by walking through the door,
it's 500,000.
This is a better culture
thousands.
in Washington, and
50,000.
They're already trending in a better direction. I know what they're doing on the field, but they're trending in a better direction already just by not having Dan Snyder there anymore.
Yep.
So he has to be the sports person of the year.
That was mine too.
Yeah.
Not mine. Not mine. I chose a
This is
team.
why we have Dave,
I chose
though.
the Howard University men's basketball team, the Bison, making their first NCAA
ever,
tournament since 1992.
Yeah.
They played well against Kansas, but here's a team that they've run a ton of coaches through, and they've had a lot of great players. They had this guy James Daniel about maybe now it feels like maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, led the nation in scoring. They still couldn't finish with the winning record. And Kenneth Blakeney has done a fantastic job there. He's a guy who's going to be on a lot of hot coaching search lists. And he's got DC roots, DeMatha, played at Duke, what have you. Where's Ben Raby when we need him to pump that up?
More from him later.
So I think he could very well find his way somewhere else. I hope he stays for a little bit longer and helps build this program, because to take a program that had been so bad for so long and get them into the NCAA tournament, and with the way that the MEAC, with the way those schools are set up, with the way their athletic departments are engineered, they're not necessarily engineered to compete at the major men's college basketball level. So to do what he was able to do with his personnel, get to the tournament, and those kids played great down the stretch. They won the in a one-bid league. It matters what you do the first 3 months of the new year, the first 2 months of the new year, but it also is important what you do during those 3 to 5 days
in March
down in Norfolk. And hats off to Coach Blakeney and the Bison, and hopefully they make it back-to-back. But regardless of what happens this winter, they can't take away this past March. So they're my sports people of the year.
All right.
Okay.
So that's 2023. What are we looking
What about
most
newcomer?
forward to?
Didn't we do a newcomer?
No, we didn't do it.
That was
You
breakthrough.
could use the newcomer as
I was just
the
gonna.
breakthrough.
I was gonna give Ed Cooley some credit for coming to town.
Okay.
Please do. Please do.
Coming
before
to
we
town
pivot.
and taking over a Georgetown program for the first time since 1972.
First on John Thompson.
John Thompson since
Yeah.
72.
Yeah.
And Ed Cooley, I think, is going to restore the Georgetown, maybe not all the way to the top, but I love his coaching style and his attitude. And, now that he just kind of pissed off everybody in Providence, it's great. We'll get some more.
Those games are going to be salty.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, bring rivalries back to the Big East.
That's actually kind of what, as we look forward to 2024, that's one of the things that I'm looking most forward to.
Maryland, Georgetown.
Well, not just that, but his wasn't the only new coaching hire, because we had AU. Dwayne Simpkins there, as Mike Brennan is out. George Mason lost their coach, Kim English to Providence, who lost their coach, Ed Cooley, to Georgetown. They brought in Tony Skinn, guy who helped lead them to the Final Four back in 2006. We can even go a little further south, as we know how large the net can be. VCU has a new coach, Ryan Odom, guy who helped engineer what was at that point the greatest upset in NCAA tournament history. And VCU, no matter who has been their head coach the last 20 years, he's been able to come in, he's been able to get them to the tournament, he's been able to compete and bring a winner down to the capital city of the Commonwealth. So
How about UCLA?
Coming to the Big Ten? That's a big thing too, man.
Well, it's funny how much turnover we've had in college. Last year was Kevin Willard.
Yeah.
And this year it's been pretty much everybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And GW was last year with Caputo.
Chris Caputo. Yeah, it's
So literally everybody in town basically in 2 years, right?
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
pretty close to
Navy. Ed DeChellis has been there for a while.
Right.
But that's an interesting thing, because they let the way that the academy is set up in varsity sports in the Patriot League, they have a roster of like 30 guys.
Yeah, right.
And so you're like, how do you prep for that?
Which trips you out when you're watching the box score.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
you're
yeah,
trying to give
yeah.
the update.
Update,
You're like,
yeah.
why
It's a
is there
mess.
19 guys on the bench?
Don't forget, we also had
But-
Spencer Carberry come to town.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Capitals'
true.
new coach.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's going to be a new coach of the Burgundy and Gold.
That's right.
Yes.
In
The only one, the safest job in town is Wes Unseld right now.
probably.
Seriously.
Davey Martinez maybe has
Probably.
another year or
Davey
two.
Martinez. He just got
Almost forgot about the net.
We
Yeah.
forgot about the Nationals.
Yeah. Yeah. And we didn't mention, as part of the big stories of the year, of course, the Wizards and Capitals proposed move to Potomac Yard in Virginia. We did, as a matter of fact, that news broke a little bit before we were able to make it a part of the huddle, or broke after we were able to make it a part of the huddle. Quick thoughts on that.
I think that they botched the move from the standpoint of instead of saying
Shouldn't
we
make
are
the
excited.
move.
Well, no, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
I think the fact that they made such a big to-do about, hey, we're building a new arena for the Capitals and the Wizards, and not mentioning, I think they should have done more to say, we're not taking teams out of the district, we are expanding our brand. We're expanding here. And this is good news for Washington, D.C., because there's going to be a chance for more concerts at Capital One Arena. Drake can be here for 3 nights. We can get Taylor Swift for 2 or what have you. The ACC tournament can now be here and come here, and we're not hinging on, oh, do we have an NBA game that night? Do we have an NHL game that night? The A10 tournament can now be a regular Washington, D.C. fixture. If they had said there's going to be so much opportunity in Washington, D.C., that may be a load of hooey, but it would have sounded a lot better than, hey, we love Alexandria and we're taking these 2 teams with us.
No, they totally botched. And he's abandoning D.C. I don't like it.
I'm not a fan of the move, but it's the world we live in.
And I'm still not convinced it's going to happen.
I'm not either, and that's why I haven't reacted to it, because we saw the former Washington owner, Jack Kent Cooke, stand on that same plot of land and talk about how they were looking forward to building there.
In 1992.
In 1992.
And it only takes a handful of salty delegates from like Lynchburg or Roanoke or Blacksburg who have no desire whatsoever to put tax dollars into Northern Virginia to gum up the works. And so even though I'm not a fan of the move, I thought that the announcement could have been handled much better.
Yeah.
I'm right on point with you too. I don't, until I actually see dirt
Shovel
coming up and the shovel.
So I refuse to acknowledge it as real because
I agree.
It's not real yet. I haven't seen anybody do it groundbreaking.
And both sides botched it. I mean, the DC too, and the mayor was thinking, there's no way he's going to do this. He's not leaving us. And then all of a sudden they find out the fact that nobody knew about the word that the $500 million had all of a sudden appeared to be that they were going to offer Ted Leontis. Nobody knew about that until after the press conference at Potomac Yard was announced.
Yeah. Right.
That's not good.
That's wild. That is absolutely wild.
Badly played Hail Mary.
Yeah.
And also, basketball is a city sport, so to take basketball out of the city would just be ridiculous.
It didn't work in Cleveland. It didn't work in Detroit.
I don't think
it's not going to work here.
It's especially not going to work here. And of course, nothing works here because the Wizards have been irrelevant for
That's
the better
the other
part
thing.
of 50
The product
years.
you've been putting on the court is not good.
We'll always have John Wall on the scores table after a Game 6 win.
After a Game 6 win.
Yeah.
Game 6.
We'll always have that. We'll always have that.
Unbelievable. Well, the thing that I'm looking most forward to in 2024, and I think George will attest to this as well, is whatever the new Commanders regime is. I think that this team is going to swing for the fences, and I think that they are going to get a home run higher. And we did a whole episode about how Mike Tomlin in Washington makes sense. I think that's going to be the move. And as each week progressively, like we inch closer to the end of the year, it's looking like there could be a mutual parting of the ways in Pittsburgh, which is unthinkable because of that organization and the remarkable stability that they've had. But also, just Washington just needs that palate cleanser, and I think Mike Tomlin is absolutely the right man for that job. And so I think you get a GM who has even loose ties to him. I think that's going to
and it
make
wouldn't
that
cost
happen.
you if he's done in Pittsburgh. It won't cost you any first-round picks.
I mean, that would be a beautiful gift right there.
That's what
even
before,
if it's a third-round pick, I would
saying
sprint running giggling to give that up.
Before, we're saying we're going to have to offer him, we'd have to see that the Commanders offer something for, but...
I can't think of anyone more I'd like to have lead the fans at FedEx Field in his rendition of Commanders than Mike Tomlin.
That right there.
Can we edit that out?
That's going to get edited out.
Yes, Jason, please. Okay, so what we're going to edit in is the comments of some of our WTOP colleagues who could not be a part of this episode.
How would you not want to come and sit here with us?
Hey, well, first of all, there's only one space here.
Okay, well,
so
we could.
I'm surprised.
Instead of just breaking a broomstick and having them fight for it, just
now
offered them.
That would be ratings.
I'm floored. I'm floored that a certain somebody who likes to show up around here on certain days when certain things are available, did not show up the day that they're having food available downstairs in the lobby.
I agree.
Well, if you don't know who he's talking about, we'll show him to you right now.
This seems to be the only way I'm going to get on this podcast. For those of you who don't know, I'm Jose Umana. I'm WTOP soccer reporter, and I'm here to help out with our end of the year questions and expectations for the upcoming season and year. First off, comeback player of the year. It's obvious I'm going to keep it in the soccer realm, and it's going to be Ali Krieger, the Dumfries native who was playing for Gotham FC in the NWSL after a couple of years where it was subpar performances, not the best starts per se for the other clubs that she played for, especially her first year at Gotham, where Trinity Rodman of the Spirit made her into a meme, dribbling her out of her mind and basically putting her on the ground forever to be plastered in Segra Field forever and ever. She needed a comeback, and it was her last year, so it was her last chance of a comeback. She came back with a vengeance. She regained her starting spot midway through the year, led the team in blocks, interceptions, completed passes, earned her spot in the best 11 of the league, and helped Gotham go from worst to first, becoming NWSL champions. I don't know how you could be more of a comeback player than that. To come back from a mediocre year, basically being humiliated throughout the internet and the trials and tribulations of her personal life, to become a champion 6 years after she failed to do so for her hometown. Comeback player of the year, no doubt about it. Now, and she gets to retire as a champion. Now, what am I looking forward to next year? Simple. The Stadium Battle of 2024. What's going to happen with the Monumental teams? Will RFK finally get knocked down? And what's going to happen with its future? Will How do you feel? Get its expansion like it wants? Will the future owners of the Nationals be happy with the way the Nats ballpark looks, or will they want more upgrades? Will Segra Field ever get better? Can't wait for these developments. They're interesting. They're really exciting, and it affects your pocket as well most of the time. So that's what I'm looking out for in 2024.
My 2023 story of the year, and no offense to the Baltimore Orioles, but how about Bruce Bochy, who not only got lured out of retirement, but then went out and won a World Series. And on that Texas Rangers team, Travis Jankowski, a fellow Lancaster Catholic High School alum, still the only Crusader to make it to the Bigs, and contributing with a hit in the Fall Classic. And what do I look forward to most in 2024? How about the date, January 8th? That's when the riverboat gets cast off. Not only should he have not been brought in the first place, but it'll be nice to see another piece removed from the former regime.
There is Jay Brooks off the top rope right there, saying Ron Rivera should have never been hired. I don't
agree with that.
I don't agree with that, because that's a little revisionist history. Because Ron Rivera, he's a guy, yes, and I've said this a million times on this podcast. If you take the 15-1 Super Bowl season off his ledger, he is not impressive, or at least his record is not impressive. No. So he is, however, somebody who, and he showed this in Carolina, he showed this here, if you were just a destitute franchise, he will take you from being one of the league's worst to being respectable and middle of the road. Unfortunately, he doesn't get you past being middle of the road. So that's why he's not lasting in Washington. It's not because he's necessarily incompetent. He's just not going to win you any championships.
Unfortunately, the culture here was, even though someone said that it was darn good, unfortunately the culture here was so bad with the previous regime that even though Ron Rivera, who may not have been a good hire, in general, it seemed like such an upgrade. Because remember how those early September games under the Jay Gruden regime, they'd come out and they'd sleepwalk. It's like, oh gosh, did they not do anything in training camp? I always felt that Ron, were they effective? Did they play the smartest? No. Did they do the right things all the time? No. But I always felt that Ron had this team ready for opening day.
Yeah.
Did they win all the time? No. But he had them playing with at least a sense of purpose from the start that we didn't have previously.
At the time that he was hired, he was the right person for this situation. I mean, you have an owner, you had the name change, you had an owner who was just being investigated by everybody all the time.
Yep.
You had COVID, he beat cancer. I mean, he was the perfect guy to kind of stabilize this organization at the time.
Right.
And we've talked about before, Ron Rivera, the GM, hurt Ron Rivera, the coach.
Yeah.
Multiple times. So that's being said, I think he deserves credit for 4 years that he has put in here, which probably to him seems like 8. Right?
That is
Maybe
all,
longer.
That is all spilt milk under the bridge,
as we've seen many times in Washington, spending 4 years in D.C. Will age you like it's 8 years.
We've aged in this podcast a long time.
I mean, so.
Just
in a good way.
look at my headshot on our website compared to me today, and
that was yesterday.
yeah, that was a lot of gray. Well, guys, this was another fun episode.
Always is.
Gentlemen.
Can we agree?
I agree.
You agree? Okay.
I
all
would
right.
rather be anywhere else in the world than right here, right now.
That's
with
what I
you
like
guys.
about this guy. That is George Wallace. That is Dave Preston. I am Rob Woodfork, and thank you for joining us for this very special edition of the DC Sports Huddle, which now you can watch us break the huddle.
Some of us.